What if the heaviest grief you carry is not for something you lost in the past, but for something that will never exist? Have you ever noticed how deeply you can mourn a tomorrow that hasn't even happened? There is a strange, quiet kind of pain in letting go of a life you thought you were going to live. Most people do not realize that we don't just attach ourselves to people or possessions. We attach ourselves to time. We attach ourselves to potential. If you have ever felt stuck, anxious, exhausted, or invisible in the face of a shattered dream, this is for you. We spend so much of our lives casting our minds forward. We plan, we hope, we build entire worlds in our imagination. We see ourselves standing next to a certain person, working a certain job, or living a certain kind of life. And when reality abruptly shifts, when the relationship ends, when the opportunity vanishes, when life simply takes a different turn, we are left with a profound sense of loss. You are not just mourning the event itself, you are mourning the ghost of tomorrow. Buddhism reminds us that much of our human suffering is rooted in this exact kind of attachment. We cling tightly to illusions. The future you are grieving was never a physical reality. It was a projection, a beautiful, comforting story you told yourself to feel safe in an unpredictable world. Buddhist wisdom teaches that while your grief is entirely valid and deeply real, the object of your grief, that specific future, was always a mirage. Imagine you spent years building a house in your mind. You painted the walls, you placed the furniture, you knew exactly how the sunlight would pour through the kitchen window in the morning. You loved this house. But this house was built entirely of clouds. When the winds of reality finally blew through, the house vanished. Now, you are standing on solid ground, looking up at the empty sky, weeping for a home you never actually stepped foot in. Think about your own life. Think about the disappointment you feel over the relationship that ended before it reached its potential. Think about the career path that was suddenly blocked, or the vision of family life that didn't unfold the way you were promised. It is entirely natural to feel the sting of those winds. But ask yourself, are you suffering because of what is happening right now? Or are you suffering because the present moment does not match the blueprint you drew in the clouds? Pause. Breathe. Let that sink in. Your heart is heavy because it is trying to hold on to something that has no weight, no form, and no reality. You are trying to carry a shadow, but you do not have to chase what was never truly yours. The first step toward peace is recognizing this illusion. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. Acknowledge the beauty of the dream you had, but gently remind yourself that it was only a dream. You are allowed to feel sad that the story ended differently than you hoped, but you must also realize that continuing to read a blank page will not make words appear. Waking up from a cherished dream is always painful, but waking up is the only way to finally see the morning light. The healing begins not when we force the dream to come true, but when we recognize why we needed the dream in the first place. Because beneath this grief is an assumption we make about how life is supposed to work. And this is where the next truth begins. 2. The illusion of the promised future. Here is the truth few people want to face. Life never actually made you a promise. We live our days treating the future like a signed contract. We tell ourselves that if we work hard enough, we will reach our goal. If we love someone deeply enough, they will stay. If we do everything right, the universe will reward us with the exact outcome we visualized. We script our lives down to the smallest detail. And when the script is torn apart by reality, when the career path is suddenly blocked, when the partner walks away, or when we simply find ourselves feeling lost and behind in life, we feel betrayed. We do not just feel sorrow, we feel wronged. We feel as though something that rightfully belonged to us has been stolen. Buddhism reminds us that this deep sense of betrayal comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of how the world works. We suffer because we crave certainty in a universe that is entirely defined by impermanence. We try to lock the future into a cage, believing that if we can just control enough variables, we will be safe. But one of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that you cannot grasp water. The tighter you squeeze your hands, the faster it slips through your fingers. Imagine you are navigating a river in a small wooden boat. You have a map, you have an oar, and you have a destination in mind. You can row with all your strength. You can steer away from the banks, but you cannot dictate the current. You cannot forbid the sudden storms, and you cannot remove the hidden rocks beneath the surface. When you demand that the river take you exactly where you planned, on the exact day you decided, you spend your entire journey fighting the water. You become exhausted, angry, and blind to the shores you are actually passing. This is what we do when we cling to a promised future. We fight the current of our own lives. We struggle against the truth of the present moment because it does not look like the map we drew in our heads. We look at our peers, we look at the expectations placed upon us, and we punish ourselves for not arriving at the destination on time. Think about your own life. Think about the heavy exhaustion you feel right now. Is it truly the present moment that is crushing you? Or is it the weight of the future you are still trying to force into existence? Ask yourself, what promise are you still waiting for life to fulfill? What timeline are you using to make yourself feel inadequate today? Stop trying to force the door open. Breathe. Do your part, then release the outcome. You can set a direction, but you must surrender the exact destination. Let the feeling of uncertainty rise without making it your enemy. You do not have to conquer the river. You only have to ride it. Because peace is not found in forcing the world to match your expectations. Peace is found in dropping the map. But when we finally stop fighting, we are often left with a quiet, lingering ache. When the future we planned is gone, what do we do with all the hope we had already invested in it? And this is where the next truth begins. Because love and hope do not simply vanish just because the future does. 3. The heavy burden of unspent love. What if the pain of an unlived future is not just the loss of a dream, but the sudden trapping of your own love? Here is the truth few people want to face. We often think of grief only as a response to something we have lost in the past. But when a future is cancelled, whether it is a relationship that ended, a calling you can no longer pursue, or a life you thought you were going to build, you are left holding an immense amount of energy. You had already begun to love the people in that future. You had already poured your heart into the person you were going to become. And now, you are standing there in the present moment with all this love and nowhere to put it. You feel a heavy, aching pressure in your chest. You feel exhausted. In Buddhist thought, the nature of energy is to move. Attachment is not just holding onto a person or a possession, it is freezing our emotional energy into a fixed, rigid shape. We suffer because we believe our love can only exist in the specific container we designed for it. Buddhism teaches us that the love itself is pure and beautiful, but our insistence that it must look a certain way is what creates the pain. We block the natural flow of our own hearts. Imagine a spring of clear water bursting from the earth, flowing toward a garden you carefully planted. You built a beautiful channel for it, guiding it to water specific flowers. Suddenly, a landslide blocks the path. The garden is cut off. If the water insists on only flowing down that one blocked path, it will pool, stagnate, and eventually turn into a flood that drowns the land around it. But the water's true nature is simply to flow. If it can let go of the garden, it will find a new path, eventually reaching a forest, a quiet valley, or the vast ocean. This is what happens when the life you were building collapses. The love you have is the water. The blocked path is the future you planned. You feel overwhelmed in your daily life because you are trying to force your devotion, your care, and your energy through a wall of stone. You keep replaying the old conversations, wishing you could change the outcome. You keep looking back at the blocked path, trying to find a crack in the rocks to push your hopes through. You isolate yourself, waiting for the rocks to move, instead of letting the water turn. Think about your own life. Think about the heavy grief you are carrying today. Ask yourself, are you suffering because you have too much love, or because you are demanding it only flow in one direction? What are you afraid will happen if you let that love exist without needing it to land exactly where you planned? Pause, breathe, observe the heavy feeling in your chest without fighting it. Recognize that this grief is simply love that has lost its map. The love you feel is not a mistake, it is not wasted, but you do not have to force it backward, into a future that is no longer there. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity, because the water is still pure, but you must release the container to save the water. And once we realize that our love can take a new shape, we must face the hardest step of the journey, because to let the water flow, we must stop fighting the stones in our path. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. Resisting the reality of now. What if your deepest exhaustion comes not from the pain of your loss, but from your endless war against reality? Here is the truth. Most of our energy is not spent healing. It is spent bargaining. When the future we wanted is taken away, we immediately begin to fight the present moment. We wake up every day and argue with the universe. We replay the conversations that led to the relationship ending. We analyze every step we took before the career collapsed. We believe that if we just think about it hard enough, if we just feel angry enough, we can somehow undo the truth of what has happened. But you cannot negotiate with reality. Buddhism teaches us a very simple yet challenging truth. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is an active choice. The pain is the sudden loss of your future. The suffering is your refusal to accept that it is gone. In Buddhist wisdom, the root of this agony is resistance. We create a massive gap between the life we are actually living and the life we demand we should be living. And in that gap, we drown. We drown in resentment. We drown in anxiety. We exhaust ourselves trying to hold the walls of our old world up, even after the roof has caved in. Imagine a bird trapped in a cage, but the cage has an open door. Instead of turning around to find the exit, the bird stares only at the one solid wall blocking its view of the sky. It throws its body against the iron bars again and again. It bruises its wings. It exhausts its heart. The bird is suffering not because it is locked away, but because it refuses to accept that the only way out requires turning its back on the wall it desperately wants to fly through. We do this in our modern lives every single day. When someone walks away, we stare at the closed door, trying to force it open with our longing. When a failure sets us back, we batter our minds against the regret, wishing we had made a different choice. We compare ourselves to others, feeling deeply behind, because we refuse to accept our own starting line. We are so focused on the future that was taken from us that we refuse to turn around and step through the open door of the present moment. We stay trapped in our own resistance. Think about that. Think about the mental loops keeping you awake at night. Ask yourself, what reality are you still refusing to accept? What closed door are you still bruising your wings against? Is this thought bringing you peace, or is it simply feeding your fear of the unknown? Pause. Breathe. Observe the resistance in your body. Let the truth of this moment exist exactly as it is, without trying to change it. Stop trying to negotiate with the past. Let the storm pass without becoming the storm. You do not have to like the reality of today. You only have to stop fighting it, because true freedom only begins the moment you stop fighting the life you actually have. But accepting the present moment requires us to understand something deeper about the fragile nature of time itself. And this is where the next truth begins. 5. The river of impermanence. What if the very nature of life is movement, and your suffering comes from trying to make it stand still? Here is the truth few people want to face. We spend our entire lives trying to freeze time. When we find a moment of happiness, a relationship that feels safe, or a vision of the future that brings us comfort, we take a mental photograph. We frame it. We lock it in a vault and demand that reality never deviates from that single, perfect image. And when life inevitably shifts, when people grow apart, when circumstances alter, when the future we planned dissolves before our eyes, we feel a profound sense of failure. We view change as a tragedy rather than the fundamental rule of existence. We mourn the unlived future because we believed it was going to be a permanent destination. We thought we would finally arrive and the story would stop. But Buddhism reminds us of a beautiful, humbling law: impermanence. Everything that exists is in a constant state of motion. The seasons turn, the sky shifts, your thoughts rise and fall, the cells in your body are continually replaced. To be alive is to be in flux. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that we suffer because we demand permanence in a world entirely made of change. Non-attachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you love deeply without demanding that the object of your love remain frozen forever. Imagine standing waist-deep in a beautiful, crystal-clear river. The water feels perfect against your skin. It is cool, refreshing, and full of life. You love this water so much that you want to keep it forever. So, you scoop up a handful and clench your fists tightly to trap it. But the moment you trap the water, it is no longer the river. It becomes stagnant. It slips through the cracks of your fingers. To truly experience the river, you cannot hold it. You must let it flow past you. This is what we do with our lives. We try to grasp a specific chapter of our journey. We try to hold on to a past version of ourselves, fearing the natural shifts in our age, our careers, and our identities. We cling to relationships, trying to force another person to remain exactly who they were the day we met them. We grieve the future because we expected it to be a permanent, unchanging monument to our desires. We are trying to hold the river in our fists. Think about your own life. Think about the heavy sorrow you feel over the path that changed. Ask yourself, what are you desperately trying to freeze in time? Are you trying to hold on to the river? What are you afraid will happen if you simply open your hands and let the water flow? Pause, breathe, observe the urge to control the current. Let the fear of change rise without following it. You do not have to build a dam to feel safe. You only have to trust the water. Because peace is not found in stopping the river. Peace is found in learning to let it carry you. But when the river washes away the future we planned, and we can no longer go back to the past we knew, we are left in a very uncomfortable place. We are left in the empty space in between, and this is where the next truth begins. 6. The space between what was and what is. What if the emptiness you feel right now is not a punishment, but a clearing? Here is a truth we rarely acknowledge. When the future we planned collapses and the past is no longer an option, we find ourselves in a terrifying, quiet place. The middle, the space between. We hate the middle. We want a plan. We want a defined path. We feel a frantic urge to fill the void the second it appears. When a major life shift occurs, when the relationship ends, when the career path vanishes, when a dream quietly slips away, we immediately rush to find the next thing to hold on to. We panic in the silence of an empty apartment. We scroll through our phones, distracting ourselves with noise. We look around at others who seem to have their lives perfectly mapped out, and we feel a deep, gnawing anxiety. We believe that if we are not moving forward toward a clearly defined goal, we are failing. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look differently at this emptiness. In our modern world, empty space is seen as a lack, a void that urgently needs to be filled. But in Buddhist thought, space is the very thing that makes existence possible. A cup is only useful because it is empty inside. A room can only hold light if you remove the clutter. This in-between space you are standing in is not a dead zone. It is a profound pause. It is a place of pure potential. Imagine a small seed buried deep in the soil during the coldest weeks of winter. It is completely surrounded by darkness. The flower it was meant to be is nowhere in sight. The warmth of the sun feels like a distant rumor. To the seed, this heavy darkness might feel like a burial. It might feel like the absolute end. But the seed is not dying. It is waiting. The darkness is exactly what it needs to soften, break open, and gather the hidden strength required to reach for the light. The quiet earth is not a tomb. It is an incubator. Think about your own life right now. You are sitting in the quiet aftermath of a broken plan. The old identity is gone, and the new one has not yet arrived. You feel buried under the pressure to figure it all out right this second. You want to rush the blooming process because you are terrified of the dark soil. You want to escape the silence because you are afraid of what you might hear if you finally sit still. But ask yourself, what if you did not have to figure it out today? What if this empty space is exactly what you need to break free from the heavy shell of your old expectations? Are you running from the silence because it is truly harmful, or simply because it is unfamiliar? Pause. Breathe. Let the silence exist. Do not rush to fill the room just because it is empty. Sit in the unknown without demanding an immediate answer. Observe the discomfort without letting it command your actions. You are not falling behind. You are simply gathering your strength in the dark. But to truly grow into whatever comes next, we must surrender the intense need to control the outcome. We have to stop trying to force our lives back into the rigid shape of the old shell. And this is where the next truth begins. 7. Releasing the script of your life. What if the story you keep telling yourself about how your life was supposed to go is the exact thing preventing you from actually living it? Here is a profound truth. We are all obsessive authors of our own suffering. Long before a future actually arrives, we write a detailed script for it. We decide when we will succeed, when we will find love, and what our happiness will look like. We tell ourselves that we must achieve a certain milestone by a specific age. We decide exactly how a partner is supposed to love us. And when the people around us inevitably go off script, when the timeline breaks, when the career stalls, when the relationship does not follow our carefully written dialogue, we do not just feel disappointed. We feel like the entire play is ruined. We become angry at reality for not reading the lines we gave it. Buddhism reminds us that our deepest agony often stems from this rigid attachment to our own narratives. The ego loves a script because a script creates the illusion of absolute safety. But one of the most liberating lessons in Buddhist thought is recognizing that you are not the author of the universe. You are a participant in it. Non-attachment does not mean abandoning your goals. It means dropping the pen. It means releasing the desperate need to dictate the rhythm of existence. Imagine standing on the shore, trying to write a script for the ocean. You draw careful lines in the sand, dictating exactly where the waves should crash, how high the water should rise, and when the tide must recede. But the ocean does not read your script. It is pulled by the moon, driven by deep currents, and shaped by distant storms. When the rising water eventually washes away your lines, you have a choice. You can stand there weeping, screaming at the tide for ruining your perfect drawing. Or you can step back, let go of your frustration, and actually feel the vast, untamed power of the sea touching your feet. We do this in our own lives every single day. We draw lines in the sand for our relationships, expecting other people to follow our exact emotional tide. We draw lines for our careers, demanding success on our chosen schedule. We look at our bank accounts, our families, and our unmet goals, and we panic because the water has washed away our plans. We spend so much energy trying to force the ocean, to obey our script, that we completely miss the life that is actually unfolding around us. Think about your own life. Think about the heavy disappointment you carry today. Ask yourself, what script are you still desperately trying to enforce? What lines in the sand are you crying over? Are you suffering because your life is truly broken, or simply because it is not following the story you wrote in your head? Pause, breathe. Let the script fall from your hands. Observe the sudden lightness of not needing to know what happens in the next scene. You do not need to command the ocean. You only need to learn how to swim in it, because life is not a story you write. It is a vastness you enter. But letting go of the script leaves us with a final, heavy question. If we no longer have the future we planned, what do we do with all the love we already packed for the journey? And this is where the next truth begins. 8. Carrying the love, leaving the weight. What if the love you feel for the future you lost was never meant to stay there? Here is a truth we often misunderstand. We believe that when a dream ends, the love we had for it must be buried alongside it. We think we have to pack our dashed hopes into a heavy iron box and drag it behind us for the rest of our lives, calling it regret. We hold on to the bitterness of the failed relationship. We carry the deep resentment of the lost career. We cling to the sorrow of the life we did not get to live, because we think letting go of the pain means betraying the depth of our love. We confuse the heavy weight of suffering with the pure lightness of devotion. But Buddhism reminds us that love itself is never heavy. Love is entirely weightless. The suffering comes from trying to chain that love to an illusion that no longer exists. We attach our purest energy to a ghost and then wonder why we feel so exhausted. One of the most beautiful lessons in Buddhist thought is that non-attachment does not mean becoming cold, distant, or empty. It means allowing your love to exist in the present moment, entirely free from the heavy anchor of the past. The love is yours. The weight is simply your resistance to reality. Imagine carrying a beautiful, glowing lantern through a deep, dark forest. You have been walking for miles, using the lantern to find a very specific cabin you were promised was waiting for you. But suddenly, the path ends in an empty clearing. The cabin is not there. It was never there. You have a profound choice to make. You can sit down in the cold dirt, cursing the light for leading you to an empty space, and wait there until the fire slowly dies out. Or you can stand up, turn around, and use that exact same light to illuminate whatever new path you choose to walk. The light was never permanently bound to the cabin. The light belongs to the traveler. We do this in our modern lives whenever a chapter unexpectedly closes. We attach our inner light to external things. We believe all our capacity to care belongs strictly to the partner who walked away. We believe our passion and drive were tied only to the job we lost or the specific timeline we failed to meet. We feel completely devastated, standing in the dark, believing our light has been stolen from us. But the love was always yours. The devotion, the quiet care, the deep capacity for connection you generated, all of that. You do not have to leave it in the ruins of an unlived tomorrow. Think about your own life. Think about the heavy sorrow pulling at your shoulders today. Ask yourself, are you carrying the love forward, or are you just dragging the heavy ruins of the past? What would happen if you took all the beautiful care you wanted to pour into that lost future and finally poured it into your own life right now? Pause, breathe, observe the heaviness you are carrying. Let the burden fall to the ground. You do not have to throw away the love. You only have to put down the heavy box of regret. You can carry the love forward without carrying the pain back, because the light is still burning inside you. It has always been burning, but to truly carry it forward, you must finally arrive at the only place where the light can actually shine. And this is where the final truth begins. 9. Arriving in the only moment that exists. What if the future you have been grieving was never meant to be your home? We began this journey by looking at the heavy ghost of tomorrow. You know the exact exhaustion I am talking about. The quiet ache of standing in the present moment, surrounded by the pieces of a broken plan, weeping for a house built of clouds. You felt stuck. You felt anxious. You felt as though life had broken a profound promise to you, leaving you stranded with a heavy heart full of unspent love. You have spent so much energy punishing yourself for not reaching a destination that simply vanished. But look at the truths you have walked through to get here. You now know that life does not sign contracts. You know that trying to freeze time is like trying to hold the river in your clenched fists. You have seen that resisting reality only turns you into a bird, bruising its wings against an open cage. You have recognized that the dark, quiet space of the unknown is not a burial, but a place of gathering strength. You have dropped the script you were desperately trying to force the ocean to read. And most importantly, you have realized that the beautiful, glowing light of your love was never permanently chained to the future you lost. The lantern has always belonged to you. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that true peace is not the absence of sorrow, nor is it the sudden arrival of a perfect future. It is the absolute, gentle acceptance of the present moment. We suffer because our bodies are here, but our minds are sprinting into a tomorrow that does not exist, or dragging the heavy ruins of a yesterday we cannot change. We split ourselves in half. We abandon ourselves. The ultimate act of self-respect is to call your energy back from the illusion of tomorrow and plant it firmly in the reality of today. Imagine walking out of a freezing storm and stepping into a quiet, warm room. You take off the soaked, heavy coat you have been wearing for years. That coat is the future you planned. It is the timeline you failed to meet. It is the relationship you could not save, and the expectations you could not fulfill. You let the heavy coat drop to the floor. For the first time in a very long time, you stand still. You listen to the rain outside, but you are no longer standing in it. You are safe. You are simply here. This is what it means to arrive in the present moment. You do not need to know what happens next. You do not need to rebuild the dream today. You only need to breathe. Think about the immense freedom in this truth. The life you actually have is waiting for you to stop fighting it. All the devotion, all the care, and all the light you wanted to pour into that lost future is still inside you, ready to be poured into this exact moment. You are not behind in life. You are not a failure because the map changed. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. Pause. Breathe. Let that sink deeply into your soul. Let go of the ghost. Put down the map. Trust the empty space. Carry your love forward and leave the heavy weight of the past behind. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.